We're here at the Pitt post-game show for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Noah Hiles, your beat reporters, and your hosts of this show here on your favorite podcasting network for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Find us on YouTube and on all your podcasting apps. Pitt has lost this one, their first ACC road loss in their last four ACC road games, 72-68 to Miami in what was a thriller. Pitt was down 19 at one point and got it down to just 2 points with Jaland Lowe having a last-second chance to tie the game with his shot. Noah, I gotta ask, you're there at in Miami for this one. How many game stories did you write as this was going down the wire?
I've come to the determination that I will no longer be writing anything until the final 30 seconds when these two teams play each other. Because the first time I covered a Pitt-Miami game last year, Pitt, I think, scored 14 unanswered points to rally to win that game at the Peterson Event Center. The second time I covered these two teams playing, which was the last time I was in this building, Pitt looked like it was dead, only to come inches shy on a Blake Hinson buzzer beater from winning an ACC championship here. And then today, down 19 points, and it kind of happened in a flash where you're writing, but you're also watching, and trying. And then, it was around the 8 minute. I was talking with the guy next to me and I said, unless this team really catches fire here, I don't see how they can even come close to having a comeback because they can't stop Miami. And then I had in my game story, the closest they ever got it was to 11. And then it was, they finally broke it to within single digits here. And then it never got closer than 6, then 5. And then it was Control-Alt-Delete. We're doing this again. We're starting over. And it was a fantastic game. Unfortunate ending for the Panthers. But I'll get into it. I mean, a big reason this ended up being a fantastic game was because of Jaland Lowe. This is a kid who had 2 points at the start of the game. 2. Or in the first half, I should say.
First half.
He finished with 17. 17 points, 7 rebounds, I believe 4 assists. This kid, I mean, for as great as Blake Hinson's been at times for this team, and I thought he had a really good game today, especially after starting as bad as he did, Jaland Lowe's been this team's best player in 2024. I don't really think you can debate it. It just,
I think that's a good point.
His efficiency when it comes to getting others involved, he's been a good rebounder. And, I mean, his shot selection has been really strong. He missed some open shots in this game, especially in the first half. But, man, did he keep battling. And I think it says something that, I asked Jeff after the game about the play design and how Jaland had the ball in his hands. And the question was basically to find out, why didn't Blake Hinson take that shot? And Jeff's answer kind of talked about how he wanted to have the ball in a guard's hands. And while, yes, it makes sense that Jaland Lowe has the ball in his hands in that situation, a month ago, anyone who had been following this team would have thought that guard would have been Ishmael Leggett or Bub Carrington. The fact that it was Jaland Lowe says a lot about his growth and what he really means to this team right now, which I think he's their best guard right now, if not their best overall player. So that was my good. Carter, what about you?
Michael was the fight that they showed to get back in this game. You're sitting there, 10 minutes left in the game. They're down 19. And it's just like you said, I'm sitting there on my couch here back in Pittsburgh. I'm like, man, this is if they don't make a run like right now, this is over. And then they started making that run. And that was the impressive part of this was they found different ways to their shooting was pretty bad to start the game. And we'll get into that in a little bit, but they started to find the guys who were hitting and then creating for them. Blake Hinson hit some shots. And then Jaland, like you said, not only did he hit big shots, but he was creating big shots. All 3 of his second half assists were 3-pointers. Got one to Blake Hinson, got one to Ishmael Leggett. And I think he got another one to Guillermo. I might be mixing that up, but either way, all 3 of his assists were to 3-pointers and 3-pointers that the Pitt had to have in those moments. And then just the collective fight you saw, the defensive effort against the Miami team that was shooting the lights out at one point in this game. There were several possessions where Pitt was defending. They cut off every screen. They cut off the drive. They took away the open shot. They said, all right, we're just going to hoist up this 3-pointer at the buzzer with a hand in our face. And Miami hit like at least 6 of those. And it was just, those were so tough on Pitt. But it should not be noted, even though they came up short, it should not be thrown away that their resilience was a big factor in this game. I think one of the more impressive moments of the game was Bub Carrington, who we'll talk about in a minute here in the bad segment because he did not shoot well. But Bub Carrington in the final, in under a minute, Ishmael Leggett shoots a three-pointer. It misses. That could be the game. Bub Carrington comes from the other side of the court, gets underneath Norshad Omier, gets the rebound. It's falling out of bounds, and instead of even trying to ricochet it off a Miami player, he finds Federico, and Federico quickly gets it back to Lowe, who hits a big three-pointer, and that got it to the 2-point game. That collective fight and effort is a good sign that this team is fighting through and staying locked in. But it's also, I know that people are going to say, well, great job. You still lost the game. But I think that there's a lot to be said with a lot of the guys who they're hoping can be a long-term part of this program.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the guys who brought them back today, you can include Hinson in that. But, I mean, the rest of this team has the opportunity to be back next year. And experiences like this is a loud building. This is an experienced team. This team had 3 starters, like Jeff pointed out after the game. 3 starters that played in the Final Four last year. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this team knows how to win big games down the stretch, and Pitt took it down to the wire once again.
Absolutely. Let's get into the bad a little bit, and I'll dip right back into Bub. And this is not an indictment of Bub's effort or what or his focus or anything like that. He just had a really bad shooting day, and he hit a shot late in the game that was actually really big for Pitt because it kept them their run going with a little bit of a fadeaway. But he went 2 of 11, and it's just like it's another really bad shooting effort there. Yeah. And again, I guess effort isn't the right word, but there's days when he is just ice cold. What do you say?
Shooting performance.
Shooting performance, yeah. There's just days when he's ice cold, and it's you want him to be able to shoot his way out of that, but it feels like he needs to be able to do things that Jaland does. Like Jaland, when his shot's not going, that means he's going to the rim and he's attacking. And if the rim's not open, he's kicking it to someone else. And Bub does do that at times. He got 4 assists in this game, just like Jaland did. But I think that there's times where Bub needs to figure a way to get out of or to get the ball out of his hands when he doesn't have the hot hand. But again, he's a freshman. He's learning just like Jalen's learning. Those are things that are going to happen. What's your bad in this game?
Yeah, and to build upon your point, I think a big thing that helps Carrington is he's got to get to his spots. There's certain spots on the floor where he does not miss very often. Mm-hmm. His mid-range jumper, I think, is one of the best I've seen in the ACC, and I just don't see him taking enough looks from the elbow or from the baseline in those spots. But my bad would be accounting for Norshad Omier. I wrote in my game preview that this was going to be the guy that Pitt needed to stop. And while Miami is very guard heavy, 5 of their top 6 guys in minutes are guards. I mean, they really don't have a center. Their top big man's only 6'7". Not that you can't win with that. Ask Jamie Dixon. I mean, he had a pretty good 6'7" big as well. But Omier is just so good at so many different things. He finished 18 points, game high 10 rebounds, and then 3 block shots. He was a guy, like Jeff pointed out, where he made 2 3-pointers earlier this week against Notre Dame. He made 2 against Pitt tonight. And when he's shooting well from the outside, he forces you to come out and kind of guard him. And now you got to stop that train that is on the tracks and chugging right to the hoop. And there just aren't any big men on this roster for Pitt that can handle that type of physicality with momentum. There just aren't. And if it's Justin Champagne down there, sure, it's a different conversation. But the physical mismatch that he has as far as mass moving forward, it's an unguardable matchup at times, unfortunately, for the Panthers. And we saw that. And they tried different things. But unlike in the Duke win last weekend, where there are missing other pieces, and there was a missing piece here with Matthew Cleveland, you couldn't double team this guy because if you do, it leaves Nigel Pack open. It leaves Wooga Poplar open. And we saw what happens when you do that. So Norchad took complete advantage of the mismatches in his favor. And I think he was the difference maker today.
Absolutely. What's your ugly in this game?
The ugly is the end of the road trip. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like this wasn't a good road trip for Pitt. I mean, even with this loss, it's very clear that Pitt became better over this 3-game stretch. And I anticipate, heading into it, I thought that this would be maybe the funeral of the season, that, we would pronounce Pitt season as a whole just kind of dead, that it's like, all right, well, they're just going to have to hope and pray they don't have a losing record and they're fighting not to finish 14th in the league. And while this probably makes it almost impossible for them to enter the ACC tournament as a team with a spot locked up in the dance. They're going to have to pretty much win out if they want that to be the case. What it does do is I think it still carries momentum moving forward. It's just unfortunate because if you follow the Duke win and then the Georgia Tech win with a 19-point comeback against a Final Four team from last year, you're heading back home with all the momentum in the world. So the ugly dissatisfaction, I guess, that comes with a disappointing loss at the final ending. That's my ugly. And Carter, to get into yours, I mean, while you could talk about the call, which there looked to be contact on Jaland Lowe, you could talk about other missed opportunities. The reality is this is an ugly ending to a 3-game road trip because this team failed to do what?
They failed to start well, or even just manage the start. And one thing that I often talk about, weathering the storm is so important. They got down 19 points, and they were lucky to get it down to what? Was it 11 at halftime? Like, you know, like they were lucky to get it down to that with all the things they did poorly in the first half. And shooting is fine. Shooting's going to happen. That's stuff they have. But they were defensive breakdowns that just looked uncharacteristic for Pitt at different times of the game, late on rotations. Part of that's also Miami's talent. They're fast, they're athletic, they're smart, they're going to be pushing you. And there's times where they hit good shots. But there were also just moments where Pitt needed to stand tall and kind of keep forcing them to have to hit those outside shots in contested situations. And if they just avoid maybe 2 or 3 more of those lapses where they gave up, pressure in certain situations, that could have led to a better situation in the end there. And I'll also throw in a tad bit here that goes into the rough start. Pitt's free throw shooting continues to plague this team. That was a big problem in this game. They went 9 of 16. That you can't do that in games like this. You hit 3 of those free throws. You go 12 of 16. You're all of a sudden that last possession that Jaland Lowe has. You're the one going to the free throw line because Miami has to foul you. You put yourself at a disadvantage in those situations, and that's not to say that Pitt doesn't work on their free throws. We see them work on their free throws. It's something that they consistently try to get better at, but it's been a problem at several other points this year, and it reared its ugly head again in this game. And even with Blake Hinson missing, he got a shooting foul at one point in the game and missed his first 2 free throws. You need to be able to hit those ones when you earn them.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, there's just in losses like this, Chris, which you could do, I guess, with any loss. But when you lose a game by 4 points and at one point where you trail by 19, you're just thinking of all the missteps that take place in the early going. And it's tough to look back at the free throws or the second chances that they allowed or just so many little things. And while, yes, that is the mark of a young team, perhaps still finding its footing, the reality is, I mean, it's almost February. Those mistakes can't happen. And they still are. And that's probably going to play the determining factor in this team not making the tournament this year. So that's all I got.
Absolutely. He's Noah Hiles. He's in Miami covering the game. He'll be flying back to Pittsburgh soon enough. Look at him with his Hawaiian shirt on the show here. I'm Chris Carter. He's Noah Hiles. Thanks for tuning in to the Pitt Post-Game Show here from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. Go to Mike's Beer Bar for 500 different available beers. 300 of those beers are local. 80 of those local beers available on tap. They have over 20 televisions that you can check out all the games you want, including Pitt basketball games whenever they're on the road, as well as the conference championship weekend, which is Sunday in the NFL. We'll get back to a lot more things. Pitt plays at home on Tuesday. We'll be there at the Peterson Event Center covering that game and giving you our post-game analysis then, as well as our mailbag show that'll be coming out. We'll see you then here on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette Podcast Network. Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.